When you saw the tower buildings, and when on September 11th, when the buildings came down, a lot of people thought, and it appeared that that was the bottom. But in reality, there was 7 stories below those buildings with superstructure, big beams, and that's where they found most of the remains and bodies. Was after September 11th to New Year's Eve. All the beams, destruction, everything was removed. At least the public thought, okay, well, Ground Zero's cleaned up. But the reality was the hardest part was yet to come.
A patch. I was doing the security for the Tower of Lights. Forever? We were talking about dogs. Well, this is the same guy? No?
Passed away. An organization was necessary in order to identify yourself as being recognized, getting credentialed, and working under that system. And then, of course, as we worked, we documented our ways which we worked with an animal, and we needed to eventually train other people and carry the legacy on.
Tomorrow, Christmas Day, will mark exactly 15 weeks since the attacks. And tonight, we look at one critical group at Ground Zero, the counselors, who try to help recovery workers come to grips with their exhaustion, their grief, and their psychological turmoil.
You know, you find sometimes jewelry on a body part or whatever, and it's like, I want to make sure that that gets to that family.
It's tough for firefighter Joe Nikie and tough for caregiver Frank Shane, who uses a specially trained dog to help those at Ground Zero bring out their feelings.
Inside of me, I hear everything that person is saying, and I'm crying inside too.
Dogs played an important role in the aftermath of 9/11 and on 9/11 itself, especially in New York at the World Trade Center, which is what I'm most familiar with. When you see a dog like Nikie, a service dog, a therapy dog, you can't help but smile and be taken out of yourself, the emotions that are dragging you down. You just see him or her, and you just relax, you let your guard down, and your emotions, whether it's despair or anger or fear. I'm not an expert on emotion. I don't know whether it dissipates, it goes to a different place, but you feel better. Nikie certainly seemed to know who needed him most, and would go to the person who most needed the comfort and the interaction with a warm, fuzzy, furry, friendly being.
Nikie didn't know about terrorists. He didn't know about airplanes. Only thing he knew was love, compassion, and people, and his friends. And Ground Zero became his family. People would ask me what it was like to work on Ground Zero, and you really can't answer that. You can't describe it to other people. It became really a brotherhood. It became a bond of people. Sometimes you can't see it, but you can feel it. So this wonderful thing developed where you never heard a bad word. You never heard people complain. As far as I know, over the 9 months, I never heard of anybody getting hurt. And that was because people looked out for each other.
So we've written about Nikie's, the dog boots, and the history of the boots that he wore, and the way that people wanted to help him as he was helping others. There was an evolution in the the boots. No dog had ever needed to work in an environment quite like Ground Zero for the length of time Nikie was there, and he needed special boots and special care. And then looking at the pins on his lanyard, looking at his credentials, you can see how seriously, what a serious commitment, and how seriously the Red Cross, the workers at Ground Zero, they took the work that Nikie did.
Pins became very special. Somebody gave you their pin. It was a way that they could actually give you something. It meant something to them, and of course it meant a lot. And Nikie would have to be credentialed. Now, I was just looking at this today. It does have a Red Cross symbol on it, but we would have to come over to Brooklyn every few days to get re-credentialed for security, and the credentials would change. But the official credential for all access of Ground Zero had a green stripe on it. They went ahead and they made, I guess, 50 of these, because I would see people with these things, and they'd be wearing them, and I'd say, that's Nikie. How are they getting Nikie's picture? Well, they took the picture and they sort of make, if you will, a baseball card that people love to have, a picture of Nikie. Over the course of the 9 months, Nikie received over, I guess, 8,000 or 9,000 letters, cards, drawings. It's just, dear Nikie, I think that if I were a dog and I had your job, I would run away and hide. It's a very important job. Somebody has to do it. But different people are meant to do different jobs. Then a question, what was your hardest job ever? Was it the terrorism of September 11th? That was a very brave thing to do. Your friend, Natalie Huckley, Dover Middle School. That last day on Ground Zero was very difficult because over the 9 months, it's like the weaving of a fabric. It's like the flag. The flag is stripes and stars, but it's all stitches and thread that's woven together. And that's what Ground Zero really was, is a fabric of people that came together. And within one day, that family and fabric just came apart and people went on their own ways. So a couple days later, almost by my feet was his vest, which I had put away in the closet, and somehow he nuzzled it out and he dropped it by me. And what he was really saying was, hey, unemployment's not acceptable for me. But we had the opportunity to come back to the Ground Zero area, which was now a reconstruction site, and he got to meet 4 of his very special and dear friends.
Oh, special friend. Hope you're not in any pain, pal. She brought a lot of joy to everybody. Me in particular.
There was one fella that we called him Captain Louis. And he was really the nicest guy, but had a very, very difficult job. He was working from 9/11 every day, and he would be right in the middle of what we called the pile and moving beams, and really saw the worst of worst. And one day, I hear this rumbling of this big piece of equipment.
Came out of the hole and or the pit, whatever you want to call it, and we're all very depressed. And there he was. I came out of the pit, made a turn. I had some oxygen and acetylene bottles. You want to lay down, pal? Lay down? Yeah. We had some oxygen and acetylene bottles on the front of the front end loader that I was running, and I saw him there on the corner, and Frank, and I kind of slammed on the brakes a little bit too much, so the bottles fell forward, and Nikie got a little startled, and I pulled a parking brake and jumped off the top step and said, "Sir, can I pet your dog?" And Frank said that's what he's here for, and he let me escape for a few minutes. The reality that we were here for, and it was it's very comforting, very comforting.
The first time I saw Nikie, I had been primed by a friend of mine that there was this wonderful comfort dog down at Ground Zero that was being used more so to bring people a little joy, a little comfort at a time when things were just so crazy for us. Particularly, you know, all the members of the service, emergency services and so on, the construction crews, the metal workers, and he was walking around and everybody was responding to him. So she kept telling me, he's huge, you gotta see this. I'm 4'11" and I wanna see the big dog. So I go out there and I meet this big mush, nothing like our rescue dogs that are so absolutely frisky and very, you could see their body posture, how lean they were, all the rest of that. And here's Nikie, just come hug me, just come love me. And my first reaction was to lay down with him, and he just let me spoon into him, and I took a nap. Just a wonderful creature, everything they said he was. When you first saw him, it would always be like you watch everyone's response. It was like magic. The feelings, instantly bonding. But he also had a knack for zeroing in on people who were maybe just a little bit more tired that day. And he just gave them that moment to just show emotion. You can show emotion with a dog easier than with people. Right, baby? Right.
In a way, our tent was a little bit of a respite for him because we had a very small staff there and we wouldn't overwhelm him as much. When he would come in, we'd kind of give him a little break. And so often I wouldn't come up to Nikie and seek comfort from him because I knew he was already himself overwhelmed. And he would sense that and just come over and kind of lean over on me like, it's okay, you know, you can lean on me too. And for me, that was just, I mean, it moved me to tears. It's just, that's how I always think of Nikie. He has this sense that it's like this empathy or something that, I mean, I know he's a dog, but he really does have it. And you feel like I think it's that unconditional love that is very difficult to find sometimes in life, even though it's an animal. It's just like now, whenever Frank and Nikie would come by, the first thing we would do is go hug Nikie. And then, oh, Frank, it's so nice to see you.
Nikie had a son, Buddy, and I was just amazed at how Buddy really didn't even need any training. He just seemed to know what to do. It was just seamless from the time he was a puppy.
For some people, maybe just waking up with us right now, while you were looking at pictures taped at around 11 o'clock last night. Here's what happened. The station, it's a nightclub in West Warwick. There was a band called Great White performing there. They used some pyrotechnics. They referred to them as just simply sparklers. Something went horribly wrong. The foam behind the stage caught fire, ignited. A few people inside realized that it had turned to disaster at that point, thought it was all part of the show. There was a mad rush to the door, and we're hearing the majority of the injuries from the people inside are burn injuries.
I remember saying that my job was done and that I would get out of disaster and work and crisis intervention. Well, that lasted about a week. And I went and saw a litter of 8 wonderful puppies, and there was this little guy, half the size of everybody else, and he was funny and he was quirky, he was smart. He was the dog that I knew would be perfect for my lifestyle and whatever direction I wanted to go. I really named him that this was a second chance. Within a few hours, I was in Newtown, Connecticut, because I thought, as long as I show up, as long as we help one person, that's good enough. A priest came over and went down on his knees and hugged him. And he said, "Chance, there's a lot of kids that need your help."
Good spot to put this.
Where'd it come from?
The 9/11 National Memorial, September 11th Memorial.
Hi.
Let's sit there
Well, you're
all
so
morning.
excited because you got your vest on. I know. You're working, right? You're working on it.
All my friends on Facebook are praying for us, and as well as family, and so I keep them updated on what's happening down here and all. So both me and my husband. So
it's almost like 9/11. Only because there were 9/11 you had injuries, but most of the stuff you couldn't do anything. You know, you train to. This is what you do, but you're trained to handle, injuries and people and everything else, and there's nothing you can do.
What was it like that day?
I wasn't here directly. I was at the firehouse from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. because there were workers here, because there's no one here, and then I left. 45 minutes after I left, that's when everything went down. So I turned around and I came back. And I've been doing traffic. I met with some of the families, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but you know what I mean. I spoke with the families, and and most of the time I'm outside.
It's the seal.
You sealing them?
Label.
Charlie likes that.
I knew at that point that Chance was put on this earth to help children. And if all we do for the rest of his life is help those children, that's good enough.
The 9/11 Museum will document the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and February 26, 1993, as well as pay tribute to those who were killed, those who came to help and to serve. Dogs need to be honored for the work that they performed. They selflessly served at Ground Zero and served in the community surrounding Ground Zero.
Well, over the months and years since 9/11 and Nikie and Buddy and now Chance, Canine Disaster Relief has become really more of a teaching organization because we need a lot more people to do this type of work. And really to pay tribute to Nikie's legacy and Buddy's, and through learning from them and being able to now work with Chance, really the mission of Canine Disaster Relief is more focused on children. Our society has changed quite a bit. So what I want to see happen is that we have more trainings, we work with more schools, we educate more people, but I also have a responsibility to be able to continue the work and have other people do it so that we can transfer this knowledge. The human-animal bond, you can't describe it until you see it. And it's just a remarkable relationship.